My name's Anastasia Somerville Wong, and I'm one of the chaplains working for Somerset NHS Foundation Trust in community and mental health. I'm also a chaplain at the University of Exeter, and I'm accredited with the Non-Religious Pastoral Support Network, which is a membership organisation of the Network for Pastoral, Spiritual and Religious Care and Health. Today, we're celebrating World Humanist Day, and I've invited guests from around the southwest of England to help me create a collection of personal understandings and approaches to humanism, and to showcase the broad range of our humanism-inspired work in the region. You can find our full article called Humanism and Me at secularliturgies.wordpress.com. But we invite you now to listen and reflect as three of us explain what humanism means to us and share with you the ways in which it inspires us to build a better world. Before we start, I'm going to light a candle to express our solidarity with humanists and the non-religious around the world, especially with those who are persecuted for their beliefs or the lack of certain beliefs, and with all those of minority faith or belief around the world who face oppression, discrimination, and violence. We want to express our shared hope for kinder, more reasonable societies, for stable and accountable governments, and for peace and cooperation between nations. Let's hear now from a couple of other humanists in the Southwest about what drew them to humanism and about what motivates them to work for humanist causes.
Hello, my name's Tim Purchase. I've been a humanist for around 20 years now. Before that, I guess I sort of fell into the non-religious category, but in a rather vague sort of way. I'd never really thought through what I believed. Then at around 40, for the first time in my life, I did start to think seriously about those big questions that both humanism and religion try to answer. Questions about how we understand the world around us, how we find meaning in our lives, how we work out what's right and what's wrong. For me, humanism gave the best answers. It made the most sense to me. Any ideas I'd had in my childhood about the existence of God or any form of life after death had faded away over the years, so religion was never really an option. I get a lot from being a humanist, but if you were to ask me what the most important thing is, I would say that it makes me think. It makes me examine what I believe, make sure that I can justify holding those beliefs. Of course, what I've ended up with is a very humanist worldview, but I've thought about it very carefully, and I like to think I'm always open to alternative points of view. It's fundamental to me that being a humanist must be about more than just sitting around and debating the existence of God or whatever. It must be about actively trying to make the world a better place. A lot of what I do to try to achieve that doesn't fall directly under the banner of humanism, although there is often a lot of overlap between my concerns as a humanist and broader issues that I and many other people, humanist or not, campaign about. The most obvious of those overlaps is climate change. It's such a significant issue that Humanists UK have a specific network of volunteers, which I'm part of, that supports and encourages humanists to take action in this area. As for specifically humanist activism, there are a couple of things that over the last 10 years or so I've been involved in Plymouth. We have a local group here that I'm involved in organising, and we put on a variety of events, talks, a book club, social gatherings, and these are always open to all, regardless of their belief. And that's particularly important to me. I believe we should be as open and inclusive as possible. By doing all of this, we're trying to provide a community for local humanists, something which, I have to be honest, humanism tends to be rather poor at. I've also been a volunteer school speaker for 5 years, and that's been a really rewarding experience. Of course, for the children, having a live, real life humanist stood up in front of them who they can speak to and ask questions of is a really great way to help them understand what humanism is about, what humanists believe and how they live their lives. But I also gain a lot from it. The children ask such insightful and demanding questions, and that makes me think more deeply and broadly about my own beliefs and how to best communicate them.
For me, Humanism means having eyes wide open to the beauties and horrors of the world and facing this reality with honesty and courage. It means having the humility to accept that we cannot claim to know more than can be proven or demonstrated with reason and science. It means striving to live an ethical life driven by empathy and compassion for all. It means championing human rights, human flourishing, and the well-being of the earth and all its creatures. Humanism means engaging in a lifetime of responsible, free thinking, critical scholarship, and the examination of our own assumptions and unconscious bias. It means engaging in the messy reality of human affairs with the determination to build a kinder, more reasonable society. As a humanist chaplain, my particular passion is for making the highest standards of inclusive spiritual care available to all, equally, everywhere. Our institutions are often good at meeting our basic physical needs, but they have less time and fewer resources to address our higher needs for meaning and purpose. The latter are often considered a luxury once our basic needs have been met, but the reality is that it's our higher needs that motivate us to get out of bed each morning and attend to our basic needs in the first place. Spiritual care is about helping people, often when they're in difficult and painful circumstances, to connect to the things that give their lives meaning, purpose, and joy. And we facilitate this by listening, by being non-judgmental and compassionate company, by creating space for people to speak and to reflect on their own situations, and by offering the perspectives of other minds, our own and the insights of other thinkers, by signposting and advocacy, by facilitating reflective, creative, and therapeutic practices, rituals, and ceremonies. The humanistic spiritual care I provide looks at the universal aspects of spirituality that are common to all humans, whether we're religious or non-religious. It's about attending to the inner life, our innermost thoughts and feelings, our personal stories and character, our collective stories, identities, heritages, and cultures. It's about connecting meaningfully with one another using wisdom and empathy. It's about expressing and refining our creativity, ingenuity, and art forms, and taking inspiration from the works of others in turn. It's about appreciating the awe-inspiring beauty and complexity of the universe and understanding our place within it. It's about finding purpose in a vocation and in causes greater than ourselves, such as social justice, human rights, and environmental repair. It means maintaining fidelity to core beliefs and values while also being willing to question them and allowing them to evolve. Indeed, spiritual care is about harmonizing our beliefs, values, behaviors, and experiences so that we can live with integrity. It's about maintaining a growth mentality and a lifelong commitment to truth seeking through open-mindedness, open-heartedness, critical scholarship, reflective practice, and mindfulness. In addition to inclusive spiritual care, I'm also passionate about equality, diversity, and inclusion, and building relationships of understanding and respect across faith and belief groups based on common values. This is an important part of my work, not only as a chaplain, but also as an executive and trustee of the Devon Faith and Belief Forum, and as a member of the University of Exeter's Faith and Belief Equality Group and the Humanist UK Dialogue Network. I'm also helping to set up NHS Humanists, a network to stand alongside the existing Humanist UK networks for defence, teachers, students, youth, LGBT humanists, the Humanist Climate Action Network, and the Faith to Faithless Initiative, which provides support for apostates. Many humanists get involved with political campaigning in order to defend and promote equality and human rights. It's common to find humanists sitting on a variety of ethics committees, and we're increasingly included on standing advisory councils on religious education, known as SACREs, where we promote understanding and respect for non-religious as well as religious worldviews in schools.
My name is Keith Denby. Humanism is a positive worldview. If everyone used reason, evidence, experience, and above all empathy to guide them, then the world would be a much better place. But people do harm to one another, to other creatures, and to the planet itself. A humanist cannot ignore this harm and has a duty to engage and to bring a humanist approach to bear on those problems. My own particular engagement has been in the area of harms that humans do to their fellows. People commit crimes, and the rational response of a society that has evolved over many centuries is to create a police force and to provide its members with strong powers to gather evidence about crime and to detain those that the evidence shows to be responsible. Giving people strong powers risks abuse and discrimination, so those powers need to be carefully monitored. Police forces in the UK invite independent members of the public to advise them, to scrutinise their activities, and to act as critical friends. I've been an independent advisor to Devon and Cornwall Police for 14 years. The role has been very demanding at times, but also very rewarding. At the outset, I said to myself that if I didn't see any change as a result of my advice, then I would resign. And years later, I'm still an advisor. I've been upskilled in understanding a wide range of police activities, and I've been granted remarkably open access to many aspects of police work. I mostly work around equality and diversity, and have specialised in helping to combat hate crime, and latterly, a considerable effort to eliminate violence by men against women and girls. I've also joined the Force Ethics Committee, which debates ethical dilemmas submitted by any member of the police officers and staff. In all my work, I try just to be a humanist. I think that is much appreciated by the police, who themselves have long valued reason and evidence, but nowadays also strongly value empathy and emotional intelligence. The personal experiences of police officers and the academic research have shown that mental health problems and early life trauma lie at the root of the majority of criminal acts. Policing is evolving to take account of this more and more, and the involvement of independent advisors in helping them to understand the communities they police is a vital part of this process.
It's really inspiring to hear how much my fellow humanists are doing to improve and enrich society here in the UK. While humanism has no creed, there are several manifestos and declarations outlining the values and principles which the majority of humanists have in common. And these are useful for explaining, reflecting on, and developing the humanistic worldview. The most famous is the Amsterdam Declaration of 1952, updated in 2002. Humanism has a long and rich history dating back to the early ethical societies of the 19th century, with threads going back to the agnostic, atheist, and other progressive movements of the Enlightenment, and even further back through the scholarship of the Renaissance humanists to the skeptical and secular philosophies of ancient Greece, Rome, China, and India. Humanist thinkers and activists have always been at the forefront of progressive social movements, including the abolition of slavery, women's suffrage, the civil rights movement, the first anti-racism movement. Indeed, humanists organised the first Global Racist Congress in 1911, anti-colonialism, the drafting of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and much, much more. Humanists come in many shapes and forms, including members of secular, skeptical, humanist, and free-thinking groups, non-affiliated individuals identifying as humanist, and members of humanistic religious or ethnic groups, such as the humanistic Jews, secular Buddhists, and non-theistic Christians. It is possible to have a humanist worldview while remaining culturally religious. A significant number of Unitarians, Unitarian Universalists, Quakers, Quaker Universalists, religious naturalists, and others also identify as humanists. Therefore, humanism embraces a range of individuals and groups whose approach to knowledge is based on reason and science, who live ethical lives based on empathy and compassion, and who strive to build kinder, fairer, and more reasonable societies. Many people today are humanists without even knowing it. Maybe you're reading this, maybe you're reading our article or listening to this right now and are surprised to find that humanism describes your worldview. While humanism does stand in stark contrast to conservative, religious, and fundamentalist worldviews, the reality is that in many cases, especially in liberal democratic societies, secular and religious worldviews have a lot of overlap in terms of values and goals. Humanism can learn a lot from the reflective practices and rituals of the religions in order to build cohesive community, while religious communities can learn a lot from humanistic philosophy and practice in order to overcome tribalism, dogmatism, and superstition. It is vital we build bridges in these times of division and polarization, and humanists are keen to work as part of a progressive alliance in order to address our global challenges and ensure a better future for us all. Prominent religious leaders have acknowledged that it is practical humanism that has enabled the various faiths and denominations to begin to see past their differences and come together to celebrate common values grounded in our common humanity. It is practical humanism which can bring an end to religious rivalry and sectarian violence, and which supports ecumenical and interfaith initiatives. We acknowledge that humanity has some serious weaknesses and flaws, but humans are also capable of great empathy and compassion. And this capacity for kindness, combined with our ingenuity, will help us to create a peaceful and sustainable future. Whether members of a faith or belief group or not, we all have a responsibility to develop our better natures. All humans start out with an innate capacity for empathy, compassion, and reasonableness, which can either be stifled or nurtured by the cultures and traditions in which we are raised. The only way our species can survive and flourish and prevent political and environmental catastrophe is to make continual efforts to grow and develop our finer feelings and nobler aspirations, and to nurture them in our children and young people. With this in mind, I'd like to share a quotation from Mengzi, better known by the Latinized version of his name, Mencius, who was a philosopher and political advisor in China in the 4th century BCE. All human beings have a constitution which suffers when it sees the suffering of others. If people catch sight suddenly of a child about to fall into a well, they will all experience a feeling of alarm and distress. Because we all have these feelings in ourselves, let us develop them, and the result will be like the blaze that is kindled from a small flame, or the spring in full spate that starts with a trickle. Let these feelings have a free rein, and they will be enough to give shelter and love to us all.